to me talking about Dracula. I'm very excited to talk about this book. I have had so much fun with it, reading it, and then filming this video and thinking of themes and ideas, and I'm really, really excited. Now, before I get into anything, really, I must address the fact that this video was not filmed on the same day, or the same time, or in the same locations even. This is not where a lot of the video is filmed. Most of it's filmed in my dad's office, but right now he's needing that, so I'm in our garage, which is my older sister's bedroom. Weird, but it's fine. So I apologize for that, but basically I'm excited to talk about the book. And before I get into what I'm really excited to talk about, which is the themes that I've chosen, which are relationships and then also misogyny, and then I tie them together at the end. Before I get into that, I have a segment which I've been mentally calling Meet the Characters, where I go over who our main characters are and kind of their roles in the story, and I also go over a little bit of the plot and how the book is set up. So this is past Ava telling you about that now. Okay, so welcome to Meet the Characters. I'll be honest with you, I have to film this again because I was so out of breath for the first one and it felt weird, but I drew this whole beautiful diagram and I'll just take you through it. So, antagonist of the book. Never gonna believe who our antagonist could be. It is in fact Count Dracula. What? Ava, I never would have guessed that. I know, that's why I'm here to tell you. Who is Count Dracula? He's a creepy guy and a vampire. Hence my vampire shirt. It only felt fitting. But Count Dracula, he's a weirdo, he's a creep, he's causing problems for the entire book. Entire book. That's why he's our antagonist. And that's why it's called Dracula. He, in the beginning, traumatizes our first main character that we meet, the lovely Jonathan Harker. He traumatizes him because Dracula has Jonathan come out to his castle and is like, I want to buy a property in London, or I want to buy a property. I can't do an accent. I want to buy a property in London, Jonathan, Mr. Harker. And so Jonathan is like, I got you, rich guy. Give me your money, here's property. And then Jonathan couldn't leave the castle, and honestly, I don't remember how he gets out of the castle, but he does, and he's fine, more or less. Not really. Yeah. But Dracula also causes a huge big problem, which takes up like most of the story, which is he turns our beautiful Lucy Westenria Lucy, he turns her into a vampire. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? Yeah, everyone in the book thought so. So who is Lucy? Lucy, she's a lovely lady. I've heard she's very pretty. She's also very nice and very kind and very sweet. I thought she was fine. I thought she was kind of plain. Not my space to judge her. But she is besties to like the sister level with Miss Mina Murray. That's her maiden name. Then it becomes Miss Harker because she marries Jonathan and it's really cute and we love them. So they are bestie westies and they are the bestest bestie westies ever. And Mina, she's great. I love Mina. She's my favorite character personally because a thing about how the book is set up, it's set up in like journal entries, like Jonathan Harker's journal, date the 3rd of May. That's when it starts. And so everything, all of this is either a journal entry or it is a letter or it is a newspaper clipping or like a telegram. It's that. And we find out about where my bookmark is, maybe a little bit before. In that area, we find out that Mina is actually the one that's gathered all of this evidence story, and she's compiled it all together for our main group of guys to all read and understand, and they are all on the same level as you as the reader, and you feel like you're part of the guys, and it's awesome. And that's all thanks to Mina. So that's who Mina is. Mina and Jonathan, they're in love. They, when the book starts, they're already engaged, and then they get married when Jonathan finally escapes from the castle. Good on him. And so Mina had been staying with Lucy while Jonathan was in the castle. He gets out of the castle, and Mina goes to visit him because she's like, yay, I finally hear from you. So they're finally able to meet. And so she leaves Lucy. For some reason, these three guys are all in love with Miss Lucy. I don't understand it. She seems fine to me, but like, really, three guys, that's... I've heard of love triangles. This is a lot. So, Lucy is only in love with Mr. Arthur Godalming. I think I got that. And so, first, Mr. John Seward, he proposes to Lucy, and she's like, hey, let me keep it real with you, man. Not into you like that. We can be friends, though. Friends. And he's like, I'd like that. Because the thing is, these three guys are also all friends. They are, like, close friends. And they all love Lucy. It's weird. So he's like, yeah, I love you, though. You're great. And she's like, I love you in a different way. And then Mr. Quincy Morris, he's also like, Lucy, I really love you. And she's like, sorry, I don't really love you the same. And they were both like, let's be friends. So they're friends. And then her real love, Arthur. I find Arthur fine. Yeah, he's fine. They're all fine. They're all fine. They're in love, and they get engaged. But they don't ever marry. No siree. Because Lucy dies. Yay! That's not happy. And then our last main character, is Dr. Van Helsing. He, to me, is the brains of the operation. He is the one that figured out that Dracula's a vampire, and that, I mean, he knew Lucy was a vampire, got turned into a vampire. Because Dracula comes to London. Surprise, surprise. He was in Transylvania, came to London. That's where everyone is. And he singles Lucy out and is like, nom, blood, yum. And then she becomes sick, very, very sick, which is when Dr. Seward, John Seward, he is a doctor. He owns a mental asylum and he has patients there. So he is noticing Lucy's sick and he's like, no, I love you, you can't die. And so he calls in his bestie. Well, first he asks Arthur if he can call in his bestie, Dr. Van Helsing. And Arthur's like, yeah, if my wife-to-be is sick, call in all of the specialists. And so Mr. Van Helsing, he's a great guy. Honestly, I kind of really like this guy. He's awesome. He comes in and he is trying to figure out what the heck is going on with Lucy? Why is she sick? And eventually he's putting the pieces together of like, she got bit by a vampire. Yeah, that's what's going on here. And so he's thinking, she's gonna die. What do I do then? Which is kind of what the rest of the book is. You know, once she dies and turns into a vampire. That's kind of what the rest of the book is. But when Miss Lucy does become a vampire, Van Helsing goes to Seward and he's like, so here's the tea. She's a vampire. We need to go kill her. Seward's like, what the crap, old man? No, she just died weirdly. That's what happened. No vampire business. No. But then it gets proven to him that, yeah, she's a vampire and she's hurting a bunch of kids, which she does. And you're like, Lucy, why? But she's a vampire, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, so they kill Lucy. And then Van Helsing, he pretty much gets everyone here, minus Lucy, on board Mainly he puts the group together. He's the ringleader. That's why I say he's the brains. He's the ringleader. And Mina, him and Mina get along swell. She pretty much gives the information to all of the guys because she's putting together all the documents and then distributing them. And then Helsing is like organizing the meetings kind of thing. They to me are the brains of the operation. And so everyone's on board. And once everyone's on board, they kick Mina out. It was heartbreaking to read that. They kick her out, and the guys go and do the dirty work because they're like, this is no place for a lady. You're gonna faint and die the moment you see anything scary. And she's like, you're right. Because obviously she's gonna say that. She's written by Mr. Bram Stoker. Oh man. So obviously she's gonna be like, you men are so right. I just wish I could help. Anyway, those are our main characters, but then there are also sub-main characters, which are somewhat important to the story. Like, there are the three sisters, which are three lady vampires that Jonathan meets in Dracula's castle at the beginning of the story. And in a lot of depictions of the story Dracula, like a lot of retellings in movies and such, the three sisters are often like really sexualized, which is honestly really gross to me. And I'm gonna tie that in with some of my analysis. I'm just saying it here because we're talking about characters and they're characters. So I originally had more characters included, but they don't really serve for my analysis part of this video. So I just decided to cut all that because this video is already really, really long. Yeah. But I think that concludes our Meet the Characters plus story and background and plot segment of this video essay. I hope it's pretty educational. But those are our lovely characters, and I'll see you in the analysis. But it won't be me, because I am tired. I'm gonna do that tomorrow. Really quick, something that I didn't mention in Meet the Characters is that Mina eventually gets bit by Dracula, and she never becomes a vampire, but she experiences that whole sickness period that Lucy also experienced. It may not seem important now, but I do mention it later when I talk about misogyny, so I just thought I should mention that now. Yes. Welcome back for Meet the Characters. Now it's time to talk about the real good stuff of this book. So, I've pulled out two main themes from the book that I really, really, really want to talk about. Now, this book has so many themes, like truly so many, that it was actually kind of baffling to me that there were a lot of quotes for a lot of the themes, and I restrained myself to only two. So those two are relationships and misogyny. Now, I'm going to start off with the relationships theme or thesis for this book, because I think Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, would approve of me pulling that out as a theme. He would probably enjoy hearing my thoughts on that. And so, as a little appreciation for him writing the book, I'm going to start off with the theme that I think he'd like more. So, let me read my thesis about... So, my thesis statement, or my main argument for this, and please don't mind that I'm looking over here. I have my laptop pulled up with a bunch of notes so that I don't forget anything, because I'm kind of scared that I'll forget everything that I want to say. So, my thesis, to get this word for word, what I thought of deep and long, is one's relationships are often the key to getting through adversity, physically and emotionally. Now, that theme is very, very true throughout this entire book. And when I say entire book, I truly mean like front to back. It's so much is about community and your friends, which I truly did not expect going into this. And I'm gratefully surprised. The first real relationship that we see in the book where the characters lean on each other for help is between Lucy and Mina, our two main ladies. And so the quote that I picked out first is on page 96, and it's a quote from Mina's journal, and it's a quote that Lucy said. So, well, she succeeded, she being Lucy, succeeded somewhat, for though sympathy can't alter facts, it can help to make them more bearable, which is such a true statement for our own lives. And this entire book, literally this entire book, there are so many spots of where them leaning on each other, the characters leaning on each other and sharing the things they're going through emotionally has like helped them so much. And in fact, I've bookmarked this entire section where that really stood out to me. I'll get more into this section later because it ties more into my other theme. But the part that I'm looking at right now is of Mina comforting Arthur. This is post Lucy death. So she said, "I love dear Lucy, and I know what she was to you, and what you were to her. She and I were like sisters, and now she is gone. Will you not let me be like a sister to you in trouble? I know what sorrows you have had, though I cannot measure the depth of them. If sympathy and pity can help in your affliction, won't you let me be of some little service for Lucy's sake?" This is page 230. And the next paragraph is talking about how Arthur was overwhelmed with grief and how he vented to her pretty much of how much he loved Lucy, and he starts sobbing hysterically, which we haven't seen him do throughout this book, and I'm sure he has in like his own moments, but it as a reader, when you're reading and you hear, oh, this guy's fiance died, and then you don't see him sob, you're kind of like, what's wrong with you? I mean, kind of. But to see him open up like that to Mina is really comforting for a reader. And because, so when you go into a book, even subconsciously, you're trying to find a lesson from it. And the lesson I found was relationships. So when I started thinking about themes, and once I read this page, the relationship theme just jumped at me. Because I'll show you, all of these paragraphs talk about Mina comforting someone, which I can tie into the misogyny later, but wow, is this whole page powerful on the relationship aspect. Because it's been a long time since I've read a book that truly shows how emotional openness with each other can strengthen your bonds with each other, if that makes sense. Like, I know I've read books where that's implied, but it's never really been laid out like this for me, because there are passages like what I just showed you of the characters fully comforting each other. In fact, there's another whole page, which I don't know if I can find it right now. I might find it in editing and pop it in, but it's right after Lucy's death, and Dr. Van Helsing is crying hysterically, and he goes on whole rants about like grief kind of feelings, and how that's oddly mixed with joy. But he's venting to Dr. Seward the entire time, and that those two already have a really close bond. But I think that passage especially, I mean, it definitely sticks with Dr. Seward, because he mentions that later of, I've been worried about Van Helsing because he might go hysterical again. But I've never in like any other book seen something where you can see the characters be emotionally vulnerable with each other, and then later that like you can not physically, but you can see the characters trust each other more and like cling to each other more because of that openness that they're willing to have with each other, which was so beautiful to see in this book. And like, I'm really impressed that that's not one of the main things that people talk about when they talk about Dracula. Because when you hear someone talk about Dracula, it's always about Count Dracula, or it's about Lucy dying, which, yeah, are huge points of the book. But if you were to ask someone what's a theme about Dracula, like someone that's read it, I don't think relationships is going to stick out to them that much, even though it's written all throughout the pages. Which, I don't quite know how to feel about that. I feel like what someone's going to say about Dracula is it's about fear, you know, because they're scared of Dracula, which, yeah, that's a theme. But no one talks about the relationship aspect of this book, which I find very, very odd, and I'm glad I get to.
So, you've probably already noticed that this video has a lot of weird cuts and jumps in it. That's because uh, I'm not used to filming a video like this, so me recording didn't quite have the mindset of everything I'm gonna say isn't gonna make it into the final cut. Um, and so I kind of just randomly jumped into another quote right now. Uh, and I feel like I have to explain that. Otherwise, it would be really, really weird. So that's what this is.
So when I talked about Van Helsing and Dr. Seward, when Dr. Seward was comforting Van Helsing, I found the pages. It's 74 and 75, mainly 75. This is all of this text, I believe it's all. Most of this text is Van Helsing talking about his grief. And, you know, he's also very mysterious because at this point he hasn't told Dr. Seward about his thoughts of Dracula and how Lucy is a vampire now, that kind of thing. Which, as a reader, infuriated me. I was like, just tell him what you know! It'll save us so much time. But this isn't fully related to my theme of relationships, but I wanted to talk about it because I think what I'm about to talk about is so tied to relationships in a way that, like, the human nature aspect of relationships and wanting to share your burden with a friend. And so here he's talking about a character, I guess you could say, he calls him King Laugh. And it's because while he's crying and hysterical over Lucy, and later Seward learns that over Lucy, but also over the whole situation and how she'll be a vampire now and she's cursed, kind of thing. He is crying and laughing at the absurdity of it all. And so he's talking so much about this King Laugh, how, let me try and read it here on 75. He says, "Yet even at such a moment, King Laugh, he come to me and shout and bellow in my ear, here I am, till the blood come dance back and bring some of the sunshine that he carry with him to my cheek. Oh, friend John, it is a strange world, a sad world, a world full of miseries and woes and troubles, and yet when King Laugh come, he make them all dance to the tune he play. Bleeding hearts and dry bones of the churchyard, and tears that burn as they fall, all dance together to the music that he make, with that smileless mouth of him. And believe me, friend John, that he is good to come and kind. Ah, we men and women are like ropes drawn tight with strain that pulls us different ways. The tears come, and like rain upon the ropes they brace us up, until perhaps the strain become too great and we break. But King Laugh he come, like the sunshine, and ease off the strains again, and we bear to go on with our labor, what it may be." I thought that passage was so beautiful when I first read it, and I'll be honest, the grammar took me a while to fully understand what was said, but, and again, I realize that this is not fully tied into relationships, but I can't help but share that because I feel like he's so right. Us today can learn from that passage of, when I first read it, I thought of dark humor, but it's not necessarily that. It's how when grief comes, so does the the joy, because you can't be fully lost in the grief. No matter how hard you try, the grief will wash away sometimes, and King Laugh will come like sunshine. And to tie it back into relationships, I think we can interpret King Joy as being a friend, because that's what he is, right? He's easing our burdens. So whether King Laugh is metaphorical or literal, literally being like a friend of yours that comes to brighten your day, I think what Van Helsing is saying here is definitely something we as the reader can learn from this book. Of like, people are always there for you. You're never that alone. And even if you don't have your physical friend, the metaphor is still there. King Laugh will always come. If you're grieving, you'll see a flower, possibly, and it'll brighten your day. Or like small moments. For me personally, this is about to get really personal, but last summer, so summer of 2024, my grandma died, and that was really hard, and it still is. And I am the kind of person that looks for signs from, I don't know what to call them, like the universe or maybe God, I don't know. But I like looking for those signs. And after she passed, I kind of started to try and find signs from her. And so for me, that's manifested as hearts, like everywhere, and I see them all of the time, especially when I'm having hard moments. I see so many heart-shaped clouds, and the other day I found a button-up shirt in my sister's clothes that she left behind when she went to college, and it's embroidered with little hearts, which is something my grandma would do. And to me, that's King Laugh. And I think that can tie into relationships that Bram Stoker's trying to teach us about. I didn't think I would share that. But I think it works. I think it works. I can't think of anything else to add. I guess I'll try and find more quotes about relationships that aren't grandma related.
So I'm genuinely really sorry about jumping in here again, but because this video is so long, I decided to cut an entire quote. So I am just jumping immediately into the last one of this section, which I think ties nicely into my overall theme of relationships.
Page 153. So, the context for this quote, in fact, I'll read a little bit before the actual quote that I want to talk about. But the backstory is essentially Dracula kind of broke into Lucy's house one night in his wolf form. And so, even more context, which I think I maybe covered this in Meet the Characters, but Lucy's mom has a heart condition. This is pre-Lucy and her mom's death. Lucy's alive, her mom is alive. Lucy, she was alone at night. She had been watched by the doctors the previous few nights because of her illness, but she was on the mend, so they both decided, hey, we want to go back to our house for like one night at least. And she was like, go for it, have fun. So she's alone, sleeping, but she gets scared. So she has her mom come up and sleep with her, and that's when Dracula jumps through her window in his wolf form, and her mother gets a heart attack, essentially, and dies on the bed. And Lucy, throughout this entire time, she is panicked, and she writes this whole account down before she goes to sleep, just in case she dies in her sleep. She wants people to know what the heck is going on. Why is my window broken? Why is everything wrong? So she writes this, and so when Van Helsing and Seward go to the house in the morning, they have to break in because their maids are asleep. They were drugged. That's a whole other thing. But they break in and they go up to find Lucy in her room, and she's laying, cuddling her mother's dead body, which is truly sad. Very sad. So I'll read the little bit before the quote. Then she looked around the room and seeing where she was, she being Lucy, shuddered. She gave a loud cry and put her poor thin hands before her pale face. We both understood what that meant, we being Van Helsing and Seward, that she had realized the full of her mother's death, so we tried what we could to comfort her. Now my actual quote. It's very short. Doubtless, sympathy eased her somewhat, but she was very low in the thought and spirit and wept silently and weakly for a long time. Okay, I can add this part too. We told her that either or both of us would now remain with her all the time, and that seemed to comfort her. That's simple. That's about relationships. Comforting, sympathy, especially in trying times. I felt like it could have been a little more powerful given the fact that her mother is dead and she's realizing that fully, and that the past entire night was not just a dream, that it was reality. I feel like these men could have done more, but regardless, that it eased her, right? It eased her. That's what our friends are there for, to ease us through hard times. And that is very apparent throughout this entire book. But that quote about Lucy is so simple. I feel like the quotes from Lucy and about her are just simple and sweet. And from just your average Joe, I feel like Bram Stoker really, really, really focused on Lucy's death and that whole part of the story. After her death, it kind of falls flat. So I really appreciate these good quotes in the beginning of Lucy, because I feel like she really, really, really adds to this relationship theme throughout the book. Because she is like our center character. She's, aside from Dracula, she's what's keeping these characters together. And now all of them are somewhat friends with each other. Lucy is truly what ties everyone together. Because if it weren't for Lucy, Mina and Jonathan would be over here doing their own thing, and our three guys would be over here doing their thing, and Van Helsing would be over here. But because Lucy's there, it brought everyone together. And when Lucy died, it bonded everyone because of the King Laughter aspect of it all. They were all King Laughter to each other. I really did not expect King Laughter to be such an important role in this relationships aspect of the book, but it makes sense. It makes sense that they're each other's King Laughter in this dark. Okay, so I know I was just in the middle of talking about relationships and themes, but my storage got full. So I had to take like a solid 10 minutes to delete stuff to make room for this. So it better be worth it. No. So let's move on to misogyny. Everyone's favorite thing. Now I'm gonna pull up my thesis statement, if I can, just to get the full gist of everything I want to say. Misogyny. This is the part where Bram Stoker would not enjoy my essay. Video essay? Yeah. So, misogyny. Even if unintentional, Bram Stoker uses his characters and story to enforce harmful gender stereotypes. That's very true. And I have to give him the benefit of the doubt, if that's the best word for it. He is a man of his time. This was published in 1892. Let me double check that. I was a few years off. 1897. So I can't fault him too much for the misogyny that this book emulates, because it was written by a man in 1897. So of course it's going to be misogynistic. But I really didn't expect it, which I should have. That's on me. To be frank, that's on me for not expecting the amount of misogyny that was in this book.
I have again cut a lot of unnecessary stuff because I just decide to talk a lot. So I'm just jumping straight into my quotes.
Where it's in the beginning when Lucy and Mina, they're writing letters back and forth to each other. And Lucy says something awfully misogynistic. I can remember the gist of what she said. I'll put the page number and the quote in editing.
So the quote is on page 60, and it says, this is Lucy talking, "My dear Mina, why are men so noble when we women are so little worthy of them?"
I was shocked because she says something like, oh, noble men, or men are so noble, and us women are so unworthy of them. And the next sentence is just like a normal sentence right after. And it caught me so off guard of, hold up, Lucy, what? Why was that sentence needed at all whatsoever? Which, when I was reading that, I didn't have the mindset that I do now of this book is riddled with misogyny. So that just wowed me. And I didn't have the thought for a while, but this book was written by a man, therefore all of the times when a woman is talking, that's a man talking. Not pretending to be a woman, but kind of pretending to have the voice of a woman. So anything he's saying is just what a man would want a woman to say, you know, of the whole, men are so great, us women, we're not worthy of them. Only a man would write that. Which, I can't fault him for being a man. I can't fault him for that. But I can fault him for the way in which he says most of his misogynistic things, because most of the misogynistic quotes are from Lucy or Mina, which is gross. Quite simply gross to me. Not cool. Especially for, like, the women of the time reading Dracula. They're gonna expect misogyny more than I am, but that's still harmful. I mean, imagine being a woman in 1897 who, she's progressive, if you will. She wants her rights, essentially. And she wants to be treated like a normal human, so when she reads these passages of, us poor women aren't worthy, and later in the book, when Mina is helping out the guys, she's putting together all of the records, and she's having great ideas, and she's sharing her ideas with the group, and when it comes to the men's point of view, they're all just like, if only you were born a man, you have the brain of a man. What? She has the brain of a person. And then I'm thinking, let me not fault the characters. Let me fault the author for that. Because, again, if you're a woman reading that, and imagine you're this woman, you're putting your own ideas together while reading this book, and you're coming to some of the same conclusions that Mina is coming to, of like, well, let's find all of Dracula's lairs. When you read that as a woman, and then if you were to have the same idea as Mina, then you read the men say, if only you were a man. Ouch. That would hurt. That would sting. That would feel awful of, oh, me a woman, I thought that. Well, if only you were a man. Ugh, icky, gross, not cool. Which I don't know if I can go into analysis of that. It's simply gross and alarming, which I'm glad it was written in 1897 and not present day. But Dracula remains a cultural icon. And I get, most of this misogyny, like the, if only you were born a man, or, oh, men are so great, those quotes aren't within the main culture of Dracula. But the three sisters are, and I don't know, which they don't really serve a plot point of the story. I was hoping they would, because then it would make sense for the book to have them. Like, me towards the end of reading this was really hoping that we're going to have some part where they wouldn't be purely just a tool for misogyny. I was really hoping they weren't going to be that. But the women, the three sisters, they don't even have names. And let's think of the cultural aspect of these three women, because I'm sure most people who like Dracula or the stories or any of like the spin-offs from this book they know who these three sisters are, or sometimes they're called like the three wives of Dracula. In every retelling of them that I can remember, they are always sexualized. Always, because that's all they serve in this book. Jonathan, the way that they try and suck his blood in the beginning is by being sensual to him. And he writes how, he wanted them to kiss him, and how he's so sorry for Mina because he's being unfaithful, because these evil women are so attractive. Which, they're vampires, I get, they have those kind of powers. But really, Mr. Stoker, that's how you're gonna use your monstrous women to get this guy? Is the only way they can get the blood is to be sensual and sexual? Really? Why can't they just fight him like a person? I get they're not people, but why can't they be on the same level as Dracula of being evil and cunning and manipulative? Why do they have to be sexual? Why? They serve no point to the actual plot of the book, and yet he still chose to keep them in there as just like a sexy lady vampires are evil because they want to tempt your men. That's icky, that's gross. That's horrible to women. And this is a theme lightly brought up in the book of how the souls of the vampires, they just want to be at rest. Like the real souls of the real people that turned into vampires, they just want to rest. And that sentiment is shared to Dracula and Lucy, but not these three sisters. Not them. They don't get the same pity from Mina, or sympathy from Mina or the others that Lucy and Dracula get. I understand Lucy because they knew her, and so when they kill her, when they really kill her, they think, her soul is at rest now and she's not tormented by this evil spirit, which is the vampire in her. And at the end when they kill Dracula, because spoiler, Dracula dies, even he gets that same release of, my soul's at rest. And Mina's the one talking about it of, I'm glad that he's at rest now. But when they kill the three sisters, it's just, they float away in dust and they're gone. It's not, they're at rest now. It's, they're gone now. Which is heartbreaking. Because when you think about them the same way that you would think about Dracula or Lucy, they should have that respect put on their name of, we were women and we were turned into vampires the same way as Lucy. If anything, these characters should have more sympathy for these women than they do for Dracula because of their ties to Lucy and, this woman was tormented by Dracula and got turned into a vampire. Now she is forced to do these awful things, and we just want to put her at rest. So why can't they share that sympathy with these other women? They can't because Bram Stoker, a man, wrote these characters, and so he's writing them with his perspective of how they view women. Because Mina, to me, she is the smartest beneath Van Helsing. She's the smartest, at least emotionally. Especially because she's a woman, she would have that respect for these three sisters, and she would share that sympathy with them and want them to be free because she's a woman and because she knows what they have suffered. But she doesn't. She doesn't mention that at all because Bram Stoker wrote her character, and he is a man who does not care about these women, which hurts. It hurts to read. Especially as a woman, it hurts because you think of these women as evil creatures, especially when you look at it from the current day standpoint of who these women are, because culture, our popular media culture has taken Dracula and then also those three sisters and written them in more things and written them in stories and video games and stuff like that. And the three sisters are always sexualized. And I know they're not real characters, but I wish they were honored in a respectable manner. But they're not. Because it was written by a man. in 1897. Which I can't really fault him for his time period or his gender. But I wish he was more sympathetic to his fellow human.
So I got really, really, really tired after that point, and the rest of that clip was me staring into space and then saying, I'm tired, good night. So that's it for that section. Now moving on.
But our last little part for this whole video project, it's gonna have my very last thesis, which I'm so excited to share, and it connects my two themes of relationship and misogyny. So my thesis states, gender gives the illusion that real bonds cannot be formed across the gender barrier. Simple, sweet, I love it. And so my main quote, which I believe I talked a little bit about this during the relationships segment, where I'm going over 230 and then 231, the passages I believe I talked about Mina, how she's comforting some of the men, namely Arthur, and then later, Morris. And so the quote that I have chosen to start out with is very misogynistic. Again, the background is Mina is comforting Arthur. We already know this. He's sobbing and crying over Lucy's death. And the quote is, we women have something of the mother in us that makes us rise above smaller matters when the mother spirit is invoked. I felt this big sorrowing man's head resting on me as though it were that of the baby that some day may lie on my bosom. And I stroked his hair as though he were my own child. I never thought at the time how strange it all was. Which, it's not really that strange. I mean, for their time it is, to comfort someone in that manner, especially between a man and a woman, which is sad. But I'm glad to see them bonding. The part that gets me is the fact that Bram Stoker had to use the analogy of mother and child to make it make sense. You know, which it already did make sense. You don't need that weird, gross analogy, especially because right before that, they're talking about how, yeah, we can be brother-sister friendship, because that's how Mina was with Lucy, and now she's like, I'll be your sister too. And he's like, I would love that. I love that kind of connection. We're good to go. So why, Bram Stoker, did you have to make it creepy? Why? I didn't enjoy it. Especially because that's not their relationship at all. It's not a mother-son dynamic whatsoever. And it's really sad to see that that's the only way he could show them bonding. And I think about this I'm trying to think about it from this perspective of an author. Like, how am I going to get my audience to realize that these characters are connecting? And for him, that was mother-son dynamic, because the time is misogynistic, which is sad. But then again, that's also how Bram Stoker's brain is working. That's how it's making sense for him, because he doesn't even try to branch his reader out into a new way of thinking, so we can't give him credit for trying to dumb it down for his audience, if that makes sense. We can't give him that kind of credit, because he didn't try to dumb it down, then branch them out. Therefore, he keeps it dumb, because that's how his brain is. I just called Bram Stoker dumb. He was very smart, because he wrote all this. I'm sorry, Bram Stoker. But another thing about this quote is that it's pushing a harmful stereotype onto women of, you have to be the mother. You're gonna be the mother. You have to be a mother, and you have to think about your interactions in the light of that, because she's thinking, oh, I can imagine me comforting my own baby as I'm comforting this grown man. Ew. And also sad how that's how her mind goes to immediately, which again, she's written by Bram Stoker, therefore Bram Stoker is thinking that is how women think, which no, it's not. And I really, really wish that the relationships and the misogyny was not tied. because I wish these characters could form meaningful bonds without their gender getting in the way. Because it reminds me of our own present day, of how men and women still can't really be seen as friends without there's something going on, you know? Which men and women can absolutely be friends. I have plenty of guy friends that I respect just as much as my female friends, and I know they respect me too. I know that because that's the interaction. And as a participant of that interaction, I know what's up and what's going on. And I'm sure that Bram Stoker had some sort of friendships with other women. Like, say, his sister-in-law. You know, why can't he have that kind of analogy in his book? Because there are many forms of relationships between men and women that are not mother-son, which he could have broadened, or not broadened, but he could have explored if he wasn't willing to go to friendship. And I'm sad to see that he didn't do that.
Okay, so I have once again taken out an entire section of quote and analysis simply because this video is egregiously long and the quote was kind of mediocre at best. So there's one more to finish it off before my conclusion.
This quote is right before the one I just shared of Quincy and Mina, and it's a short, sweet line where this is all from Mina's journal, and she says, "No one but a woman can help a man when he is in trouble of the heart and he has no one to comfort him." That to me is less about demeaning women and more about the fact that men can't be emotionally vulnerable with each other and they can't build strong bonds together through hardship, which we can see echoed back in, I talked about this in my relationships, the quote from Van Helsing of King Laughter. I know I went on a whole tangent about that, but before all of that goes on, Dr. Seward is saying how he's pulling the blinds down of their carriage so that no one can see him crying and nobody can judge them. And he's also thinking about himself of like, nobody can judge me because I'm with this crying guy, which really, really hurts. I'm not even a man, but I know that would sting somewhat to read that, yeah, guys can't be emotionally vulnerable with each other. If you want to be emotionally vulnerable with someone, you have to go to a woman who is very emotional, which again is misogynistic towards women, but it's also misogynistic towards men. Why can't a bro comfort his bro? Huh, Bram Stoker? You're a guy yourself. Why are you gonna push that harmful stereotype? And again, I know he is a man of his time and he is not a progressive kind of guy. And honestly, he's not trying to challenge these gender barriers in his book. He simply wrote a fun book about a vampire and people dying, which isn't that fun. But I know that he's not trying to share any sort of statement about these gender roles, but I can still talk about them. I can still point out where he's gone wrong and what he said about them that's harmful. And he's harmful to both men and women, which is like double whammy, you know? Why would you include that in your book? Which, that's the main thing to me of why. The book is so long, and it has so many different plot points, that why are some of these lines necessary? I simply don't understand why he had to go about making things misogynistic. I don't. And why would you have to let that affect the bonding of these characters and the relationships that they have? Because just leave that alone and let them form true bonds to help them through the hard times. Why does it have to come back to, you're a guy, you can't cry in front of your bros, and you're just a lady, you know? Therefore, think about this in the context of mother and son when you're comforting a man. It's not helpful, and it's not cool, and I don't enjoy reading that, especially knowing that somebody could take that as a theme of the book, like I've done, but they could take it literally, and it could just be even more harmful for society if everyone read this book, and which not everyone's gonna read this book, let's be honest. But if they read it and were like, yeah, that's the lesson I learned is, oh, I'm a guy, I can't cry with my friends. I have to find a lady to cry with now if I want to be emotionally vulnerable. And the thing, the guys don't cry that much in the book, so they can't even let their emotions out at all, which hurts because they've gone through so much trauma. Let it out, please. And I think that's a good enough analysis of both of them together. So, we have finally reached the end of this video. And before I go into like a full conclusion of wrapping up all my ideas and tying up loose ends that I may have left, I just want to say that I genuinely did enjoy reading Dracula, and I know a lot of it turned negative of me talking about things I didn't enjoy and thought were disgusting, quite frankly. But overall, I had fun. Overall, I would recommend it as a read for someone. I found it very thought-provoking, not necessarily in like a progressive way, but in a, ooh, what happens next? I'm so excited to see where this goes kind of way. Especially because most people only know the part where Lucy dies or she becomes a vampire and then they kill her. But no one ever really talks about the ending, which that was fun to hear about for the first time. And so overall, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was fun and kind of silly until I started thinking deeper about it. But real conclusion time. So we know that Bram Stoker was trying to teach us a little something about relationships and bonding. Did he go about that in the right way? I don't really think so, but I'm not going to fault him too much for it, because as I've already stated several times, he's a man of his time, which is a misogynistic time, so he's gonna go about it in a misogynistic way, which is, it's a real shame. It's a real shame that that's how the reality of it is. But if you can ignore all of that, it was really beautiful, and the characters bonded, and they had long-lasting friendships with each other because of the emotional strife that they went through together, and because of sharing one another's burdens and being friends to the point of like family almost. That was a beautiful lesson to learn from the book, and that's what I think everyone should come away from this book with at least a little bit of. Or the main theme of this book is relationships and your friends and family, because it affects so much of your life. And I'm really glad that that's the main theme that I've gotten from this book, because that's my analysis of Dracula. I thought it was wonderful, and the relationships were beautiful, minus the misogyny. So if you ignore the misogyny, it's beautiful and wonderful. But I hope you enjoyed it. And I really hope that I got all of my thoughts across effectively. And I don't know. I had a fun time.